Hello friends, SentinalH here, and welcome back to our ReactorCraft tutorial series. In this episode, we're going to tackle the beast that is the Thorium Reactor. Now I want to get this out of the way right now. This video is mostly about the mechanics of the Thorium Reactor and how it works, and how to make the fuel and how to get it to work. I don't know the optimum reactor setups for this. There is no optimum reactor setup in this video, but I will show you one way to get it to work. I do not know the optimum way to set up a thorium reactor. All I can do is show you how that I've got it to work in the way that I've got it to work. So the only three things that we need that we haven't covered in previous episodes are the nuclear waste duct, the thorium fuel core, and the fuel dump valve. Now, I haven't quite figured out how the fuel dump valve works. I know you're supposed to stick it underneath your thorium fuel cores, but it doesn't seem like there's a way to make that work, and I'll discuss why in a moment, unless I'm just missing something. So let's go through how to craft these, and then we'll talk about them a little bit. And then we'll go and talk about everything else, because there's a lot of stuff. So to make the thorium fuel cores, which are the most important blocks, obviously, in a work table, you will combine a standard fuel core, 3 base panels, 2 sintered tungsten ingots, an HSLA steel ingot, and 2 aluminum alloy ingots. That will give you a thorium fuel core. So they're fairly expensive. All right? In order to craft the fuel dump valve, you're going to need a bedrock pipe, 4 liquid pipes, an iron bars, 2 base panels, and an impeller. Okay, and you don't absolutely need this. It's a safety feature. You're also going to need the nuclear waste duct in order to get the waste out of the fuel core. And this is crafted with 6 concrete blocks, a block of glass, and 2 iron bars. And you get 16 of those. Okay, so it's just a new type of pipe to transport liquids. Well, only one liquid. So if I right-click on the thorium fuel core, we can see what the internal GUI looks like. Unlike standard fuel cores, you do not put solid fuel in here. It's got 3 liquid tanks. It only deals in liquid fuel. Firstly, the fuel salts themselves. This is the fuel for the reactor, what you have to put into it. The heated fuel salts, which is the output that you get if you've got it set up right and it actually starts running. And then the waste, which is also a liquid. This is what you pump out through the nuclear waste duct. Okay? If we click on the info button, we can see the manual, the handbook page for it. These use molten thorium fuel salts to generate electricity. They're not self-sufficient. They require, this is where we get into the complicated bits. They are not self-sufficient. You can't just shove fuel in it and it'll produce heat and stuff on its own. It requires neutron flux and heat in order to start. This book here only says neutron flux, but it neutron flux and heat. Additionally, as it gets hotter, this is what it needs: temperature dependent neutron fertility. It basically means the hotter it gets, the higher the temperature rises, it becomes less reactive. Okay, so the thorium fuel core will produce fewer neutrons and stuff as it heats up. So the thorium fuel core is resistant to runaway meltdowns, whereas if, let's say, you're running a plutonium reactor, if your cooling quits for even a moment, it's probably going to explode because that stuff gets hot. This thing is resistant to that. It can still get too hot, but it doesn't explode and produce crazy radiation fields and a giant hole in the ground and corium. That doesn't happen. The worst that'll happen with your thorium fuel cores, if you're using the fuel dump valve, right, is that it will dump its fuel out onto the ground. Which can be which is not good, but far easier to clean up than a massive explosion. Nothing on the second page. Fuel dump valve. In the event of exceeding a critical temperature of 1100 C, a thorium reactor will trigger an emergency fuel dump. This can cause a radiation leak. Is to be avoided if possible. So the fuel dump valve, if the thorium fuel core hits 1100 C, will purge all of the fuel out of it. It's not a good thing, but at least your fuel core doesn't explode because, like we said, it's kind of expensive. So you can stack these on top of each other. It gets the connected textures, and I have tested this. You put the fuel in through the top, and I need to actually grab myself a liquid pipe to show this. You put fuel in through the top and see it connects. Okay, you cannot connect liquid fuel pipes to the sides of a thorium fuel core, only to the top and the bottom. Okay, to the bottom, and if you attach it to the bottom, this is how it will. This is where it will output the heated salts. So the hot stuff that you throw through a heat exchanger in order to actually get the power out. Okay, fuel dump valve would go on the bottom here, and however, I can't get the nuclear waste ducts to attach to it. The nuclear waste ducts attach to the sides of the actual thorium fuel core. Now, you don't need to attach this to the side of every thorium fuel core. When you stack them on top of each other, the liquid values will drop to the bottom. All of the waste produced will drop to the bottommost block. All of the heated fuel salts will drop to the bottommost block. So you would only need to place a waste duct on the side of the bottom block, because that's where all the waste would collect. Okay? Now, the issue I'm having with this thing is that you can't connect liquid pipes to the dump valve, which means I can't figure out how you would use the dump valve and get the hot fuel salts out of the reactor. Seems to me like placing the dump valve at the bottom of the stack blocks your ability to get this out. Maybe I'm missing something, but these liquid pipes don't connect to it, so I don't know. I don't know if you can put these on the side of the stack or not. I haven't tested it because I haven't been able to heat it that much. Now, these are the 3 blocks that you need for the thorium setup itself, the actual construction. However, the fuel production for this thing is very complex and requires a lot of supporting machines and a lot of different steps. And that's why you're going to need all 6 of these machines right here. These 4 for producing fuel, and these 2 for cleaning up the waste. You're going to need a uranium processor, which you need to already have at this point, because like we mentioned, you need nuclear neutron flux to get this thing to work, which means that you need standard fission reactors to support this. So you're going to need a uranium processor, you'll need a grinder, you'll need a centrifugal fluid extractor, you'll need a fuel enhancer from RotaryCraft. Then, to clean up the actual liquid waste, you're going to need a fluid crystallizer and a centrifuge. And then you're going to need, a way to store the waste. Okay? So you need all 6 of these. Probably more than one of certain ones, especially the uranium processors, because they're really slow. Reka says that you can use the tile accelerators from Chromatocraft in order to accelerate the speed of these. So that'd be cool. Otherwise, they run really slowly. So, you need these 6 machines. Now, let's talk about how you actually produce the fuel. We've got a nether portal over here because we're going to go to the nether. We're going to take a look at the setup. But I briefly want to describe, before we go into detail how this works, this is the fuel setup that I've got. It's not organized in any particular way for producing fuel for the thorium reactor. Basically, you need to acquire molten lithium, put it into a uranium processor, add fluorite, take that as well as some other things, emerald dust, which turns it into this fluid, which you then put into a fuel enhancer, which is where you add the thorium dust, and that produces the actual fuel that is used by the thorium reactor. You output that from the fuel enhancer using the fuel lines, but you can only input it into the thorium reactor using liquid pipes. So I've used a reservoir in between. Okay? So let's go through this step by step. The thorium, in order to get it, you need to mine thorite ore, which is found in the nether. You can tell by the texture. And while we're in the nether, we can also use a centrifugal fluid extractor to acquire lithium. So let's hop in there and we'll talk about it. Thankfully, it loads very, very quickly. So there's our, we're in the nether here. Now this is a mod pack, so there's all kinds of crazy stuff in the nether, but nothing about the ReactorCraft has changed, so we're fine. Now, we're down here at this lava lake, and I've got some power going into a centrifugal fluid extractor, which is underneath the lava. See, it's right here. Okay. Now, if you remember, the centrifugal fluid extractor is the machine that you use to get heavy water out of water. See? Centrifugal fluid extractor. By sticking it inside of lava, it will instead gather molten lithium. Now, there's a couple of requirements that need to be met. Your centrifugal fluid extractor needs to be placed above lava. Okay, so there needs to be lava underneath it. However, there also needs to be lava on 3 sides of it. Okay, what this means is that you're not going to get away with just bucketing some lava wherever you want it and sticking a centrifugal fluid extractor in it. That ain't going to work, because it also is influenced by Y levels. Here in the Nether, the Y level can be, I think, what, 36? In the overworld, I don't know the exact minimum Y level. I'd assume it would start working at the level that the lava pools generally spawn at. But somebody on the forum said that it does work at Y level 10 in the overworld. So you need to find an actual lava pool. You're not going to get away with just bucketing it up to actually get the molten lithium. So you're gonna have to use things like, I don't know, the magic world warping gates, those little blocks that teleport stuff from ReactorCraft, or you're gonna have to run a really long pipe. But this is how you get the molten lithium. You just extract it from lava. I don't believe that it actually consumes lava blocks in the same way that the centrifuge does not consume water blocks when it produces heavy water. It just continuously generates molten lithium. If we go to our little reservoir here, we can see about how quickly it's generating molten lithium. It appears to be generating a couple hundred a second. I believe, but I'm not sure, that in the Nether, the production rate of it is increased compared to the overworld. Ray can clarify that, but I would recommend putting it in the Nether. You're going to have to come here anyway to find the thorite, so you may as well set up some lithium production while you're here. Okay, there's plenty of ways to get this output into the overworld. So that's that. We don't need this. Actually, no, I should have kept the thorite block. We'll head back to the overworld. Hopefully our reactor doesn't explode. Nope. I placed a chunk loader underneath it just to make sure. Now that we have our required resources, let's talk about things a bit. So, in addition to the molten lithium, you are going to need emeralds. You're going to need a ton of emeralds. So you're definitely going to want some sort of emerald production. There are mods that allow you to do that, like AgroCraft and something else, magical crops, that'll allow you to farm these with plants. I highly recommend it, because you're going to need a ton of emeralds. Now, the way that you use the emeralds is you simply stick your emeralds in a grinder from RotaryCraft. Give it power. I've given it quite a bit of power so it'll run quickly. And it will grind the emeralds into emerald dust. Alright? You're going to need this emerald dust in a moment. Now I've got here my molten lithium in a reservoir. Feed it into a uranium processor. It will fill up the leftmost tank. Then you need to take your emerald dust and you need to stick that in there. And it will start to process. Okay? It's going to be slow unless you've accelerated the uranium processor. We're going to let this run so that we can check it out and see. It's going to create another intermediary product. So it's important that we know what it's going to create. If I put the fluoride in there, you won't be able to see the intermediate product. It'll just go straight into the other thing. So we process it, and it produces lithium beryllium fluoride. Okay. We need to also put fluorite in there. Now, there was already some fluorite left in this thing, because that's where the fluoride part comes from. So from the emerald, you get beryllium. You mix it with the lithium. You mix it with the fluorite to get lithium beryllium fluoride. So you can see how it's three components, right? That's the blue stuff. Okay. You go from the pink stuff to the blue stuff. Okay? This is lithium beryllium fluoride, but you can't stick this directly into the reactor. You need to get a different fluid. You need to get what's called, currently on the version I've got here, fluid.rc lift beryllium fuel. It's lithium beryllium fuel. So in order to get that, you need to pump the lithium beryllium fluoride into the top of a fuel enhancer. Okay? Then you need to give the fluid enhancer your thorium dust, as well as more fluorite. Okay, that's important. If you just put in thorium, nothing's going to happen. Here, I'll crank it on, and you look and see. Nothing's happening. It's not doing anything. But when you add the actual fluorite, it chews through the lithium and the fluorite the thorium and fluorite like crazy. It chews through it really, really quickly. I've got this thing cranked up to a very high speed, but you can see it chewed through it. All right, so you're gonna need a lot of it. So we've produced our lithium beryllium fuel. We put it into a reservoir, and we're now piping it into our thorium fuel core. Now, my thorium fuel cores, I have 2 of them. I've surrounded this entire thing with tons of neutron reflectors just because I want to try and reflect all the neutrons. I don't know if this is actually worth it, or if I should just place 1 reflector followed by a steel block. I don't know, but this is how I've done it, whether it's a good idea or not. So I've got 2 thorium fuel cores here, just so I could demonstrate that they do work stacked. And I'm pumping in our fuel. You can see here that the fuel salts is completely full on both of them. The bottom one is filling up with heated fuel salts because it's actually running and actually producing the heated fuel salts. And then we've got our waste on the side, which you can't see because we're piping it out. Now, you need 2 things. Remember, we said we need 2 things in order to get the thorium reactor to actually start producing the hot beryllium. We need heat and we need neutron flux. Now, I do not know, and I haven't messed with this enough to come up with an actual decent setup. What I've done is jerry-rigged it so that it does work. I don't know if this is the intended behavior. It's probably not intended behavior, but Reiki would have to clarify that. He's said that it needs to be preheated, but there's a lot of ways that don't work. This is one way that does work. So what I've got here is I've just set up a heat exchanger next to an empty steam boiler. Okay, there's no water in this, and I'm pumping in hot CO2, which you get out of a HTGR reactor, and I'm just pumping the cold CO2 into this huge reservoir because the only reason it's here is just to empty it out so that the heat exchanger keeps working. And that is heating my thorium reactor core. You can see our empty steam boiler is heated up to about 700 C. So it has heated our thorium fuel core to just over 500 C. The thorium fuel cores begin working at 400. Okay, you need to get them up to 400 C before they'll start producing. Okay, now we know that the maximum temperature is 1200. Reika released a graph on the forum, and I don't really know how to read it. There's a big bell curve at 800 C, so I'm assuming here that the optimum temperature for the thorium fuel core is 800 C, and anything after 800, it starts to decrease in effectiveness because of the heat throttling. So I'm going to assume that 800 C is the ideal temperature. I've heated this up to 510 just because it started to work. Okay, so the bottom one is being directly heated by this empty steam boiler to 500 C, whereas this top one is picking up residual heat from the bottom one and averages around 400 C. So that's the heat, but we also need neutrons. Those neutrons need to come from fission reactions. Okay, that's standard fission fuel cores with running some sort of fuel, uranium or plutonium. I'm running plutonium because plutonium is much hotter. So that it would get up to speed faster than a standard uranium fuel core in this test. You cannot use breeder reactors. Okay, Reika specifically disabled the breeder reactor neutrons from working in the thorium fuel cores. I assume because it would be too easy, because the breeder cores need to be hot, so they're gonna be heating up the thorium fuel core much easier. So I'm assuming that's the reason he disabled that, because it would have been too simple. You can use standard fission fuel cores running uranium or plutonium. Those neutrons will have an effect on the thorium fuel core. We know that for a fact. This is the intended behavior. You're supposed to use these to supply neutrons. On the forums, some people were saying that the loose neutrons coming from spent waste containers could also work on the thorium fuel core. I haven't tested it. I know for a fact, because I've tested it, that you cannot use spent fuel containers to heat up the thorium fuel cores. It doesn't work. I tried it. It doesn't work. That would have been really awesome, but it would also have seemed a bit cheaty. but it doesn't work. So what I'm talking about, let me just explain what I'm talking about here, because in this video I'm going to be able to tell you a lot more of what doesn't work than what does. This works, but it might not be intended or the best way to do it, but I can tell you certainly what doesn't work. If I was to place a spent fuel container here and stick some nuclear waste in this thing would heat up. But that heat does not transfer to the thorium fuel core. It doesn't work. I've tried it, it doesn't work. So don't even bother. You can't do that. You cannot use a friction heater from RotaryCraft to heat up the thorium fuel core. You cannot use a heater from RotaryCraft to heat up the thorium fuel core. You cannot put a bucket of lava next to the thorium fuel core in order to heat it up. None of that works. You cannot put a heat exchanger right up against the thorium fuel core. That might seem like the ideal way to do it, but it doesn't work. The heat exchanger does not put heat into the thorium fuel core directly. However, you can put a steam boiler, an empty steam boiler, as an intermediary between the two in order to transfer the heat, and that does work. Okay? There we go. Those are the things that I've been able to test. Whether they're intended or not, I don't know. I'm pretty sure I'm on a very recent version of this thing. So, that's how you need to heat it up and things like that. Now, I've got two lines of fission cores, one on the lower end, one on the higher end, just to demonstrate how this thing works. So before I added this upper level here, this top fuel core was not producing, or didn't seem to be producing, because you need neutrons to hit the thorium fuel core once it's reached its operating temperature of at least 400 C in order to produce the hot beryllium. And every time it produces hot beryllium, you get the black sparks on it, and it makes that sound, that hissing sound. That's what you're hearing right now. That's the sound that you're producing the heated fuel salts. Maybe we should get the heated fuel salts out of there. I don't want to risk it exploding. It's probably not going to explode, but it's probably not going to produce anymore unless we get it out. So let's run some pipes and place our reservoir. There's our hot beryllium fluoride coming out of our reactor. Okay? So every time it produces the hot beryllium fluoride, it will make that sound. That is the same sound and the same particles that usually indicate that a nuclear reactor is close to melting down. So the thorium fuel cores are a bit scary because the sound that we have associated with a melting down reactor is now the sign that your fuel core is actually working. So yeah, there's that. One thing I don't understand is that the thorium fuel core is currently at 500 C, yet it's managing to produce a liquid that's at 848 C. So a bit funky. It feels like the thorium fuel core should be the same temperature as the liquid it produces. But anyway, this hot beryllium fluoride you can pump into a heat exchanger. It will give you the back the lithium beryllium fluoride. Which you will need to pump back through a fluid enhancer fuel enhancer in order to get back the fuel that you can pump back in. So you can't just pump the cold beryllium fluoride from a heat exchanger back into the reactor. It has to go back through the fuel enhancer and have more thorium added to it. Okay, that's important. Now you've noticed this big pipe here. This is our nuclear waste duct. It's filled with black liquid. That's the nuclear waste. So what do we do with it? We put it into a fluid crystallizer. The fluid crystallizer can store 8,000 millibuckets of this liquid nuclear waste. We just need to give it power, and it will solidify the liquid nuclear waste. It will cool it down from, it doesn't tell me what the temperature is, but it will cool it down, it says 447 C, into unprocessed nuclear waste, which is a solid object, an item that you can pick up and carry. Now, I don't know if the unprocessed nuclear waste is radioactive. It probably is, because it's unprocessed nuclear waste, so I would highly recommend not picking it up yourself. You should probably pump it into this next machine you need to put it into, which is the centrifuge. This stuff does not go in a spent fuel container. This stuff goes into the centrifuge. put it in the centrifuge, turn the centrifuge on, and it will process this unprocessed nuclear waste into a selection of nuclear waste products. Now, I don't know if it's random or if there is a specific, if the types of nuclear waste that this produces are specific. But what Reka has said is that overall, the thorium reactor produces less nuclear waste during its runtime than the other nuclear reactors. Okay, so this does produce less waste, but it is a far more complicated fuel system. Okay, so we've currently got cesium-137, we've got rhodium-105, we've got xenon-135, excuse me, we got promethium-147. Will we get any more? What? Okay, it looks like you need to pull it out, and if you don't pull it out, the next batch won't work. So, because these things don't stack. Okay, so you got to pull out your prior nuclear waste out of the centrifuge before the next one will work. So make sure that you're pulling out the nuclear waste fast enough. Basically, you want to use, like, maybe the pneumatic item duct from RotaryCraft would work well for this, or any other pipe from a different mod that'll pull out of this centrifuge. But this stuff needs to go into the spent waste containers, and the long-lived stuff needs to go into the nuclear waste disposal drum, unless you're going to run it into an AE system and just store it on a drive, which is what I usually did. Pay no attention to this machine right here. This is just a chunk loader. We'll talk about that in a different video. It's from RotaryCraft, and it's just a chunk loader. I highly recommend that you always use chunk loaders when you're running nuclear reactors. Otherwise, you may come back to your base to find a hole in the ground. Because remember, we're using fission reactors here, which can explode. These plutonium fuel cores are running at a very high temperature. If they hit 500 C, they start to emit the little black particles and might scare you a bit. But the way I have this set up with these 4 of them, it's not producing enough heat to get these things to a dangerous temperature. Just be careful, okay? Now, like I said, do not emulate the setup that I've got here. I have jerry-rigged a system together that causes the thorium fuel cores to produce their hot liquid. This is mostly here just to demonstrate to you the mechanisms. This is how you get a thorium fuel core to work. This is how you produce its fuel. This is how you pipe the fuel in. You need to heat it up. This is how I was able to heat it up. You need to apply neutrons. This is how I applied neutrons. Is this an optimal setup? Absolutely not. I guarantee this is not how the thing was designed to be used. This is how I was able to get it to work. So it's going to take a lot of experimentation to figure out optimal builds for the thorium fuel core. It's going to take a lot of experimentation to figure out exactly how we should be setting this up. But it's experimentation that I'm going to start working on. It's experimentation that I hope you guys will start working on. And if you come up with a design for a thorium reactor, I would highly enjoy it if you shot it my way, so I could build it and try it out. And we can come up and work together with the guys in the forums to come up with an actual good thorium reactor design. Because this right here is just showing how the mechanics work. This is not how you're supposed to set it up. All right? Anyway, I'm sure Reka will comment on this video all the ways in which I'm wrong about this, and I know this is not how you're supposed to set it up, but the mechanics of this, it works. So that's the mechanics. Thorium fuel core basics: supply it with its fuel, heat it up to at least 400 C. 800 seems to be the optimal temperature, and then hit it with neutrons from the standard fuel core reactors. Okay, that's how you get a thorium fuel core to work. It will produce the liquid waste. It will produce the hot beryllium fluoride. The hot beryllium fluoride goes into a heat exchanger and makes and heats boilers in order to produce steam and run turbines. The nuclear waste needs to go into the fluid crystallizer to produce unprocessed waste, which needs to go into the centrifuge to turn it into the nuclear waste that you have to dispose of. That is how you run a thorium reactor. It's quite complex. It's far more complex than the fission reactors which produce their waste directly and only need you to put fuel in them and then cool them. It's far more complicated than a high-temperature gas reactor. It's more complicated than a breeder reactor. I'm pretty sure this is the most complicated fission reactor in ReactorCraft. The only thing more complicated than this would be the fusion reactor, which is on a whole nother level. So anyway, that's the thorium reactor, the thorium fuel core. I can't, like I said, I just keep repeating myself, but I have to say it over and over. This is not how you're supposed to set it up. I guarantee this is probably not how you're supposed to set it up. This is a way that I was able to get it to work. We're going to have to come up with actual setups that actually work, that allow it to produce more power out than it takes in, and make it efficient. I've never been one to create efficient setups. There are far more knowledgeable people, far better people on the forums and stuff that are better at creating efficient reactor designs. So I challenge you guys, pick up the thorium reactor, try and make an efficient design. I'm going to try and make some designs myself to see if they'll work, and I'll keep you updated. But this was requested, and I went through and I got it to work. So if you were the one who requested this, now you know how it works. We can all figure out a better way to set it up, because this is not it. So anyway, that's it for the thorium fuel core video. In the future, when we get if we get some actual good setups going, I'll make another video where we'll demonstrate an actual useful thorium reactor setup. Until then, this is what we got, and don't build this in your survival world. This is not how it's meant to work. So just experiment with it in creative, see if we can get some decent reactor designs, and we'll have another video coming out about that when we get some. The next video coming out from ReactorCraft, let me know in the comments what you want to see. I still need to cover the high temperature gas reactor and a couple other things. We have some new blocks in RotaryCraft and some changes to some old ones that we're going to go through. So let me know in the comments what you want to see next. Stay tuned for future episodes. I'm SentinalH, and I'm signing out.